HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents City on Edge, a novel, by Stefanie Pintoff, read by Tanya Eby. The line between good and evil is permeable, and almost anyone can be induced to cross it. Philip Zimbardo. All human beings, as we meet them, are commingled out of good and evil. Robert Louis Stevenson, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Part 1. Inside the Frozen Zone. 4th Wednesday of November, 12:41 p.m. to 6:59 p.m. Chapter 1. 15 CPW. Sometimes the simplest things could be complicated, like enjoying an incredible moment. Perched high above Central Park West, Evangeline Rossi had an unparalleled view of the city from the penthouse terrace. Straight ahead, the park was a fiery swath of oranges, yellows, and reds. To her right, she could trace the Manhattan skyline down to One World Trade Center. On her left, the rooftops of Harlem stretched in a wide arc. It was as expansive as the scene where Spider-Man swings, swirling and twirling through the canyons of Manhattan, and every bit as dizzying. Mind over matter, she told herself. But the vertigo didn't cooperate. More than a sensation that played cruel tricks on her, it was a reminder that the brain never controlled the body completely. She was at the mercy of a host of involuntary physical responses, from her rapid heartbeat to tingling skin to skewed and unsteady vision. Control was just an illusion. She glanced over to her host, tall, lean, and unbothered by the fact that he was more than 500 feet above street level. He let his elbows dangle over the railing edge. Damned if she'd let him see her struggle. She forced a relaxed smile, even though her world was spinning and her frozen fingers could no longer feel the railing she clutched. The flimsy metal and glass panel was an insufficient barrier anyway against frigid 35-mile-per-hour winds. The temperature on the old CNN billboard might read 43 degrees Fahrenheit, but today's wind gusts had sent the real feel to below freezing. "You were right," she managed to say. "The view's spectacular."
"It's even better from right here."
Tony Falcon's dark eyes turned from the skyline to focus on Eve, and sparked with something primitive. Seeing only the good-time blonde he'd met over drinks at the Marble Bar of the Modern, he placed a hand on top of hers, and Eve's every nerve came alive, responding to his warmth. Another involuntary response. A helicopter buzzed nearby, one of several security measures in place for tomorrow's Thanksgiving Day parade. Eve steadied herself, glanced down to the street, and saw dozens of officers on foot. Small as ants, they swarmed, and her equilibrium shifted awkwardly again.
"Hope they've got it in hand,"
he said, shaking his head.
3.5 million people crammed onto these streets. Every year it's a miracle when nothing happens.
Eve focused on Tony. She didn't have to look to envision the scene on the ground that created a frozen zone. Garbage cans had been removed, banks were being searched, barricades had been erected, concrete stanchions, reinforced by city sanitation trucks filled with sand, each strategically placed to block potential car bombs. The goal was simple: to erect a secure cordon that would be as impenetrable as a medieval fort. The helicopter approached, hovering directly above them.
"New York's finest sure know how to ruin a moment,"
Tony snorted in disgust. He pulled his hand away, buried it in the pocket of his cardigan sweater with leather elbow patches. He stood, solid and steady, and Eve envied him. "I'm cold, anyway," she said. "Maybe we should go inside."
"An excellent idea."
He moved to open the glass terrace door. 6 steps later, when her head cleared the threshold, she felt a rush of relief. She found a smile. The illusion of control had returned. Just inside, she stopped, lingered by a classic black Steinway piano. Scattered memories fell into place of practices and concerts, All now seemed a lifetime ago. "Do you play?" she asked him. She circled the piano, relishing how with every step her balance grew steadier. He shook his head.
"I keep it for guests. Sometimes the boy."
He indicated one of the photos on top of the piano. The setting was a park, and the boy was bashful, poking his head out from behind a tree. The camera had focused on his long, dark lashes. "Handsome." "Your son?" She picked up the frame and studied it. The child appeared to be about 7 or 8.
"No, just a nephew."
A lie. The likeness was too strong in the squared jaw, the broad nose, the expression of the boy's mouth. It reminded her there was plenty she still didn't know about her host. She replaced the photograph. The man liked his secrets, almost as much as he liked his trophies. The Steinway was just one of many. In the living room alone, Eva also recognized a Klimt, a Rembrandt, and a marble tribute to the female form by Rodin. She walked toward him. "You've surrounded yourself with beautiful things."
"Life can be tough. Beauty makes it easier to bear."
Another lie. If Eve knew one thing about the man who'd invited her up, it was this. He was obsessed with collecting fine objects. When he was a child, he'd hoarded comic books and toy cars. Then he grew up, made a small fortune from a tech startup, and began an acquisition spree like no other. Vintage sports cars, rare works of art, exotic animals, and women. The harder to obtain, the better. The fact that he wanted to possess her normally would have bothered her, but she liked him much more than she expected to. Master of the Universe types were usually predictable, too one-dimensional for her taste. Besides, they had things in common. She wasn't his usual empty blonde. In fact, she was a collector too, though what she collected was information. She observed human behavior and choices, clues that told her volumes about a person. It was a habit she couldn't kick. Didn't matter whether the subject was personal or professional. From the way Tony moved, she knew that he was supremely confident, a risk-taker. From the clothes he wore, she knew that he favored quality over ostentation. When they talked, he focused on her with an intensity that made her feel she was the only one in the room who mattered. It was seductive, just like the man himself. A man used to getting exactly what he wanted. Which probably explained why, when she peeled his hands off her thighs at lunch the day before, it only made him want her more. "I should go." Eve touched her leather jacket, which she'd casually draped on the back of the sofa, and made as if to put it on.
"Not yet."
He passed her a snifter of cognac. His hand brushed her own, strong and sure. "Be careful."
"It's the afternoon before Thanksgiving," he teased. "Where do you really have to be?"
Eve's heartbeat quickened. "Company's coming. I have to get ready." He reached over and brushed a blonde curl from her forehead. His tanned body was solid and powerful under his monogrammed shirt.
"Relax. I can have your whole Thanksgiving delivered on Haviland China."
She put down the cognac after taking a small sip. She felt his gaze travel down her chest. She was wearing body-hugging jeans, high leather boots, and a red silk shirt with 5 buttons. The first was already undone. She didn't move. She let him stare.
"Stay a while,"
he breathed. His fingers traced the side of her face, down her neck, to the deep V of her silk shirt. Then he caught her arm, pushing up her hammered metal bracelet so he could kiss her wrist. She grabbed his hand, held it, and took a step toward the bedroom. He followed her 6 additional steps, stopped. With his free hand, he unbuttoned his own Egyptian cotton shirt and let it slip off his shoulders, revealing a smooth chest tapering down to a full 6-pack. Another 4 steps. His fingers then made quick work of the buttons on Eve's shirt, which fell to the floor, revealing a low-cut lace camisole.
"Magnificent,"
he whispered. 5 final steps, and they were in his bedroom. She took in what lay before her. It was everything she'd hoped to see. except for one thing. By her count, there were 3 women in the room other than herself. One by Picasso, one by Degas, and another by Klimt. "You two like unique women," she breathed. He'd just kissed her arm. Long, slow.
"They mean very much to me."
"But one is missing. The most important lady. The one you've been telling me about."
"The only woman I want now is you."
His breathing was heavy, his hands were moving fast, but she had seen him steal a quick glance to his right, where there was a door. It looked like the entry to an ordinary closet. Eve knew better. She slid her fingers around his arm, tugged lightly, pulling him toward the closet that wasn't a closet. "How about something different? Something I'll bet even you haven't done before." She unzipped her left black leather boot, tossed it aside. He quirked an eyebrow.
"What do you have in mind?"
She pressed her lips to his ear. "I want the lady to watch." She kicked her other boot off. He grinned as he flicked the light switch on the wall, and suddenly what had appeared to be a television opposite the bed was revealed to be a computer screen with a security keypad. It required a code, as well as his voice command, before the closet door swung open, revealing a safe room. It was rectangular, about 8 feet by 15, clad in polished walnut. There was a chaise longue, a full-stocked bar, a 4-foot-high steel safe, and an entire wall of masterpieces. He led her to an emerald green case with brass fittings that lay on top of the safe. Wrapping his body around hers, he kissed the nape of her neck and opened the lid. Eve couldn't stop the delighted cry that escaped her lips. Inside the case, nestled in a cushion of green silk, was the Lady Blunt Stradivarius from 1721. Named after the granddaughter of Lord Byron, the violin had last sold for nearly $16 million to an anonymous buyer. She pulled Tony to the floor, next to the safe, right below the Lady Blunt. She straddled him. He took a noisy breath, then seemed to relax. His fingers reached for her blonde curls. "A masterpiece," she said, intercepting Tony's hand. She casually slipped the metal bracelet from her arm, clapped it around his wrist, and activated it by pressing a small remote in her pocket. The electromagnetic handcuff instantly bound Tony to the base of the steel safe with a force stronger than 26 men. His eyes widened with surprise. Definitely not the good-time blonde he'd expected. Eve was on her feet before he could react. She snatched the case holding the Lady Blunt, enabled her earpiece, and called for backup. 1 minute, 32 seconds later, they were not alone. 3 officers in body armor had joined them in the safe room, guns raised. "Anthony Falcon, you're under arrest," she began calmly. She never lifted her eyes from his chest. He was like a dog, less threatened when no one made eye contact. "Fotiti!" Tony's accent wasn't as charming when he cursed. "On charges related to the theft of over $119 million worth of stolen art and musical instruments," she finished. "You bitch," he snarled. The agents assisting Eve surrounded him, deactivated the electromagnetic cuff still attaching him firmly to the steel safe, pinned his arms behind his back. First he resisted, then he looked around, sized up the situation, regained control of himself. He was outnumbered, and there was no way he could win. But he was a fighter who, even in retreat, was already planning his next battle.
"Who are you? What's your real name?"
"You lost. Do this the right way, Tony."
"There's nothing right about this."
Eve's 3 agents marched him out of the bedroom. But before he was through the door, he wrenched his head back toward Eve. His face was twisted with menace when he said,
"I have eyes and ears all over this city. I'll be in touch."
Eve shrugged. "Guys always say they're going to call, then they never do." Classified. VDUC file number A3065277. Current status, active. Evangeline Rossi. Nickname, Eve. Age, 34. Race/ethnicity: Caucasian, Italian. Height: 5 foot 5 inches. Weight: 117 pounds. Eyes: hazel. Hair: blonde. Current address: 350 Riverside Drive, Morningside Heights. Criminal record: none. Expertise: behavioral science and criminal investigative analysis. Subspecialties in kinesics and paralinguistics. Seasoned interrogator and hostage negotiator. Education: Yale University, B.S., and M.S. Clinical Psychology. Personal: family: mother, Annabella, deceased. Stepfather, Zev Berger, recently deceased, former CIA operative. Spouse/significant other: none. Religion: agnostic. Interests: addicted to crossword puzzles, concert-level pianist, avid runner who has finished 4 NYC marathons. Profile: strengths. The stepdaughter of a CIA spook, Eve was born into the business and is dedicated to her work, believing that it makes the world a better place. Her instincts and training give her insight into the criminal mind that most agents of her age and experience do not possess. Weaknesses: a perfectionist. She likes control and does not delegate well. Notes: popular within the ranks following successful resolution of a hostage crisis at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Case history, number 667533. But increasingly less of a team player since moving her offices into the mansion she inherited from her stepfather. Assessment prepared and updated by ADIC Henry Ma, for internal use only. News. 1 hour later, WJXZ reports. Good afternoon. This is WJXZ News with Gwen Allenson reporting from the Upper West Side, where all the balloons, not to mention Macy's workers, street vendors, and of course New York's finest, are getting pumped up for tomorrow's Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. A number of tourists have braved the sleet and bone-chilling winds to watch this annual event. I've been talking with Sarah and Francesca, high school seniors from Cincinnati, who have been snapping pictures as this big blue creature behind me is inflated. Papa Smurf. Do you know it takes 90 minutes to inflate one of these giant balloons? Francesca. This is so cool. Can we get a selfie with you and Papa Smurf? Gwen. Only if you promise to catch my good side. Seriously, you can see all the activity behind me. Everyone here will be working overtime throughout the night to get ready for the main event. The numbers tell the story. Tomorrow's parade is going to feature more than 8,000 participants, including cheerleaders, dancers, singers, clowns, and 11 marching bands, in addition to 18 giant character balloons, like Papa Smurf here, and 24 floats. Sarah and Francesca tell me they'll be part of it all tomorrow, performing with the show choir from their high school. Sarah. That's Briarwoods High, and we'll be on the Spirit of the Midwest float in the first section of the parade. Gwen. All of us at WJXZ wish you good luck, girls. Now, back to you, Bob. Chapter 2. Giant Balloon Inflation Area, West 77th to West 81st Street. Everyone loves a parade, but not Allie Donovan. Not today. Not just because she had passed 2 cops in full body armor, standing with submachine guns hoisted right across the street from a vendor selling cotton candy, stuffed animals, and balloons. A plush Hello Kitty purchase later, she continued walking, totally freezing to death, in the kind of sleet and wind that had already turned her favorite umbrella into a mess of broken spokes. It was the 4th Wednesday in November, and she was right outside the American Museum of Natural History, together with a bunch of news reporters, police, parade workers, and street vendors, all gathered at the staging ground where the giant balloons were being inflated. This used to be a neighborhood secret. Not anymore. Now the crowds came from all over. In another hour, Allie would see lines snaking around the museum, people packed like sardines, at least 10 deep. It no longer attracted just Upper West Siders pushing Bratzillas and double strollers. There would also be suits from the Upper East Side, yoga lovers from Tribeca, granola crunchers from Brooklyn, and slow-moving vacationers from flyover states. They would all keep coming over the next 7 hours as 18 giant characters sprang to life, from Paddington and Pikachu to SpongeBob and Spider-Man. But right now Allie could still move, and so she did. She cut through the traffic, weaving left and darting right, passing Snoopy and Woodstock. They were bursting with helium, but covered with net, itching to fly, but sandbagged to the ground. She passed the silver gas tanks that lined the park blocks, their black hoses feeding the balloons, making them grow bigger and bigger, until eventually they stood as tall as a New York City brownstone. Then she stopped. Someone she'd been desperately trying to avoid had just seen her. The woman under an oversized golf umbrella was charging straight toward her, a pink plastic smile frozen on her face. The crowd parted in front of her like she was Moses crossing the Red Sea. They were smart enough to get out of her way, because even when she wasn't wearing a black raincoat and boots with heels like stilts, Gwen Allinson always reminded Allie of a burnt matchstick, brittle and prone to snap. Allie clutched her broken umbrella and shrank as much as she could, deep into her bright purple rain slicker, silently willing Gwen to go away. She thought for the gazillionth time how it was stupid that her dad actually liked this woman. Then she thought of the advice Sam, their driver and all-around protector, had given her.
Treat her like you would an annoying bee. Just stand still and let her buzz on by. That's how you don't get stung.
Sam didn't like Gwen either. Since he was a grown-up, he wasn't allowed to say so, but Allie had figured it out. Sam normally talked a mile a minute, but he clammed up the moment Gwen entered the car. Gwen was already shaking her head. "Allie, what did you do to that umbrella?" she scolded, snatching it away. Allie's heart sank. Nothing, she thought. The wind ruined it. No help from me. She pulled her hood tighter and watched Gwen pull a new one out of her vast black patent bag. It was drab olive green, ugly and small, and she offered it to Allie. Allie made no move to take it. With a tisk-tisk noise, Gwen reprimanded her. "You already look like a drowned rat. Most girls would want to look their best if they knew they were going to be on the news with their dad." Allie wasn't most girls. Never had been and never would be. And who said she wanted to be on TV? Today was what Dad called a command performance. That meant she had to show up, shut up, and smile, because he was dedicating Macy's newest balloon, and all eyes would be on her. If she didn't look happy about it, people would notice and talk, and it would be all over the evening news and tabloid papers. "When I was your age, I cared how I looked," Gwen continued. Allie stared at a lipstick smudge on Gwen's teeth, neon pink staining white enamel, but she only said thank you and took the umbrella. That was one of 8 safe phrases she used in conversation with Gwen. The others were, "Yes, please," "No, thank you," "Hello," "Goodbye," "I'm fine," "I'm not hungry," "Can you close my door, please?" The phrases were polite, but without more, they were what Sam called conversation closers. Apparently, they discouraged dialogue and shut down social interaction, which was normally considered a bad thing, since part of growing up meant having the ability to talk politely and at length with people you couldn't stand. But Allie was in no hurry to grow up, and no one could shut down a conversation better than she could. Today she got lucky. Gwen saw a celebrity she wanted to interview, and suddenly she was off, jostling umbrellas and blowing perfumed air kisses. Allie disappeared into the throng, and that was when it hit her. Something is wrong. She saw too many adults, not enough kids. But she shook off her sense of foreboding as easily as the water from her raincoat. She thought, "I'm only upset by Gwen." She kept moving, stopping to gaze at the lifeless balloons. Hello Kitty had yet to take shape. The Aflac duck was a blob on the ground. She turned the corner at West 77th Street and walked past 3 local TV stations, their reporters and news vans all flanking Central Park West. Next was Central Command, where 24 officers and a Homeland Security crew huddled in animated conversation under their tent. Her eyes drifted briefly to her dad, who was wearing his dress uniform and his tensest expression. She recognized 2 of his advisors and the counterterrorism team, and heard snatches of conversation. Phrases like threat level orange and close Central Park West. Her gaze flicked to the park, and more armored cops carrying machine guns. The traffic light turned green. Buses and yellow cabs flew by, wheels spinning through puddles and wipers thrashing double time. Except the non-stop traffic wasn't the problem. The people were, dozens of them, coming on foot, arriving too fast. They were coming by subway, arriving in hordes. Too many adults, not enough kids. Allie walked faster and went left, where the balloon Dad was going to dedicate, Molly the mongoose, was still a lump. She had admirers already gathering, fans of the wildly popular Go and Find Out, an educational cartoon based on the mongoose's motto. Spider-Man was up next. Surrounded by blue, slicker-clad helium workers, the giant balloon slowly started to take form. A separate team of 9 inflators, all drenched in canary yellow Macy's raincoats, struggled with his slippery upper body, finally connecting it to the silver tanker truck parked in front of the Beresford. The gas started pumping, and in a matter of minutes, Spidey's long, stretched-out hand began to reach forward. From an apartment at the Beresford, 7 floors up, early Christmas lights twinkled and blinked. Foreheads were pressed against every glass window. How lucky they all were, Allie thought. They got a full view of the action, but from a warm, dry, safe spot. Dozens of cops were staring straight ahead, stone-faced. Allie kept moving, because she didn't like these crowds. She felt better, a little safer, once she'd put some distance between herself and the rest of them. Too many adults, not enough kids. She passed by Toothless and the Wimpy Kid and reached Columbus Avenue. There, more street vendors hawked candy and popcorn and neon glow sticks. And she remembered last year, when her mom bought her a purple wand, all sparkles and light, and it had felt like magic as it glowed. Her throat closed up tight when she thought about her mom, and she started to choke up. So quick, she chased that memory away. She must have still looked upset. A second later, a cop named Dale, who worked her dad's security detail, caught sight of her at the corner.
"Hey, Allie, you okay, sweetheart?"
"Yeah, just checking out the balloons," she lied without any second thought, because she couldn't possibly admit how much she missed her mom, or how much the crowds were freaking her out. She'd be brought to her dad and end up spending the whole afternoon squirming under his watchful, worried eye. Or, total horrors, he might delegate her to Gwen. There would be worried looks that meant Allie's still depressed, or Allie doesn't have a perspective on things. Then there'd be a serious discussion about how it was very important to talk to someone about her grief, about how holidays were hard. But Dale's question had rattled something in her chest. She felt it as she drifted with the crowds, taking 3 steps at a time. Her heart was banging too fast. A dozen officers were patrolling, their bodies tense, ready for anything. She dodged different people in the growing crowd, 2 women, tall and reed-thin, who wielded their umbrellas like kendo swords, an old black man who shuffled by, leaning heavily on his cane, 3 guys in Cornell sweatshirts, cracking jokes and laughing at SpongeBob, a family of 5 with a shrink-wrapped stroller who pushed past her, their sons sloshing through puddles. They were all wet, shivering, sleet-shocked, but self-absorbed. And Allie had counted 6 kids. Why don't I see more? She wandered back to Spider-Man. His head was high in the air, his torso still sagged low to the ground. A burst of wind caught her full in the face. She pulled her hood tight, caught sight of a woman wearing a Macy's yellow rain slicker standing by Spidey's fingers.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?